In today's video, I'm going to be talking about a topic that I've based the foundations of my entire channel on, that being the Nintendo Switch eShop. And I know that I've talked about this many times before, from its asset flips to its scam artists, but on previous occasions, the subject matter is focused in on looking at it in a wholly negative light without much of an attempt made to offer up a solution. And so today, I'm not only going to discuss everything wrong with it, but also how to fix it, why it needs fixing, and finally giving my thoughts on why I don't think Nintendo actually want to fix it. With the Nintendo Switch 2 just over the horizon though, I think that now would be a prime opportunity for Nintendo to right the wrongs and think less about filling the pockets and more about people just like you and me, the gamers who are filling those pockets. So let's begin with the what and why then. Now, it's worth bearing in mind as we go through this video that the Nintendo eShop is designed to be a one-stop shop for Nintendo Switch owners to find and buy Nintendo Switch games. It's its sole purpose, accounting for approximately half of all games sold for the Switch, and there's no other way to purchase games digitally outside of buying and redeeming game keys. After 2 months of being away from the channel though, thanks to my little bundle of joy being born, I returned to find the eShop not only as horrendous as ever when it came to the barrage of Shovelware releases, but dare I say it, in a worse state than when I left it, and scrolling through the latest releases trying to muster up the motivation to cover something was now more difficult than ever. If you're a content creator, you'll likely understand that when considering your next video, you often need that spark of inspiration, and trawling through line after line of cheap mobile ports and trashy low effort indie titles, the sparks just weren't coming. But I'm not here to talk about me, so let's get into the meat of it. What is wrong with the Nintendo Switch eShop? Well, this question is entirely subjective and I'll be sharing my thoughts and opinions throughout this video, but I'm going to try and base them objectively around facts, so let's kick things off with its user interface, because for the past 7 years the overall look and feel of the Nintendo Switch eShop hasn't much changed. Sure, it's got a few new menu options, such as the games on sale menu in October of 2017 and the charts and discovery menus a little later on, but the fundamental functionality and appearance of it has remained the same since the Switch released. We still have the 3 per line huge thumbnails accompanied by the prices of games, which is great for accessibility in docked mode, especially when navigating using the touchscreen. But the simple act of loading in all those thumbnails, coupled with the time it takes to load line after line of trash, makes simply browsing the eShop an arduous task. And of the 3 big players, Nintendo's eShop is by far the slowest of the lot in my opinion. Simply finding games in the first place is one of the most time-consuming tasks you'll ever experience, and it's impossible to even find them whilst browsing unless you happen to stumble across them in a sale. So then you have to rely on an underbaked search engine, which, whilst at least attempting to assist you with its predictive text, requires exact keywords in order to yield meaningful results, and has barely any options for filtering. But once you find a game and select it, you're in for more loading, followed by multiple screens in order to purchase it, and God forbid you want to actually re-download a game that you've already purchased, as if it isn't archived on the console, you'll then have to either search for it all over again, or if you can't quite remember the name of it, head into the re-download menu and scroll through a billion different games, which, if like me, you've accrued quite a bit of a collection, will make you wish that you hadn't even bothered. What I'm trying to say here is that the whole thing is ludicrously slow, and it's about time Nintendo took that old sheepdog out back, pumped a couple of rounds into its skull, and brought us a cute new puppy of an eShop to play with. Now, I've actually been doing a bit of work on potential solutions to these problems myself, as I'm currently studying for a degree, and my recent module titled Interaction Design has been all about the user experience and looking at how a user actually interacts with products from a hardware and software perspective, but I just so happened to select the Nintendo Switch eShop as my little project for the module and put my thoughts forwards on how one might improve the user experience with the eShop. This was what I came up with though. Now, you'll notice the sidebar menu is pretty much identical apart from the My eShop option, which we'll get onto shortly. but I think the current menus on the eShop are sufficient for the most part and pretty much cover everything you need to do. The main difference in my version though is that you actually need to tap or press the plus button in order to open it, because I can't count the number of times that I've been scrolling through the games with the analog stick only to move it too far to the left by accident and scroll to a different menu, completely resetting my position on the previous menu. It's a minor annoyance, but it's one that gets on my tits on a regular basis. When it comes to the search engine, we still have the on-screen keyboard, which admittedly isn't great and could definitely be improved on, perhaps by predicting the next letter that it expects you to type. And instead of just giving you keywords, it would be great if these searches would just bring up the games as you search, similar to the Xbox and PlayStation stores, though this would likely prove a little tricky given the amount of screen space on offer. The key difference here though is the filter options, which are much more varied and allow you to quickly narrow it down to things like genres and price ranges without going into a separate menu, and also filter by things like number of players, publishers and play modes. There are probably a ton of other filtering options that you could add in, but that's just my initial thoughts, and feel free to add yours down in the comments section below. When it comes to the search results and general listings of games, I've added in a rating system to the thumbnails, which is something that I've always felt that the Nintendo Switch eShop has desperately needed, and again, we'll get onto that later. But upon selecting a game, I then suggested adding in a sidebar which would pop out and give you details on the game instead of having to navigate to another screen. From there, you could then proceed to purchase, and of course selecting your payment option is always something that's going to be required, but the verification step could be done when you initially select your profile to browse the eShop with, saving you the time of having to re-enter your password every time you want to make a purchase. Or even better, Nintendo could simply just add a cart to the eShop, allowing you to purchase multiple games at once. Understandably though, the user experience is probably an easy thing to overlook, or at least fail to iterate on when all you care about is selling games, but when you're confining people to a one-stop shop for digital purchases on the Nintendo Switch and you provide an awful interface with which to do so, it really just results in people not wanting to bother, or at least that's my experience of it. So now we come on to the topic of the games themselves, and by God this is something that I've harped on about since the conception of the channel, but we're going to do it once more with feeling and talk about how to tackle the issues of shovelware, scams and shite. Now let's first talk about the scale of the problem, because if you browsed the eShop recently, you probably noticed a drastic increase in the quantity of trash tiles being published, but this issue has been escalating for quite some time now, and I've made several videos highlighting just how deep this rabbit hole goes. But to quickly summarise, you have your standard shovelware titles, which with one whiff you can probably pass up and move on, your asset flips, which, unless you know they're asset flips, could pass for real games, but are essentially full or partial game templates purchased by the developer and repackaged without any real creational input. You also have your mobile ports, which tend to be low quality titles that are usually free to play on mobile, but which Switch publishers feel the need to rip the arse out of and charge extortionate amounts for. Your TIDI games, which more often than not contain the word hentai in the title, and usually nothing more than a tile swapping puzzler featuring AI generated artwork. And then you have the scams, or Midnight Works specials as I like to call them. These games are the worst of the lot in my opinion, as they often appear to be legitimate games, but in fact feature fake in-game screenshots and fake descriptions and gameplay features, so it's very difficult to actually identify them for the complete scams that they are. It's these kind of games that are featured heavily on the channel though, and the publisher Midnight Works have even gone so far as publishing them under multiple names, but if you want to know more on these, I recommend checking out my Scam Games playlist. The fact is, finding a decent title on the Switch these days is almost impossible, and the simple act of browsing the eShop is incredibly overwhelming as you're bombarded with row after row of low effort, low quality shovelware shite, with your only real chance of identifying a game that might be worth a shot being A, it's a first party Nintendo title, or B, you've heard about it elsewhere, perhaps in a review or some kind of marketing campaign from the publisher, and this not only causes a problem for consumers, but also for the developers and publishers of these games. Now, you may be thinking that, considering the fact that there are over 120 million active Switch users as of March 2024, people across the globe will be kicking and screaming about the state of the eShop. But unfortunately, this isn't the case at all. You only need to look at Nintendo's sale figures to see that nearly 80% of their total game sales come from first-party titles, with the other 20% being third-party, to see that the vast majority of Switch users only purchase the console to play Nintendo-published games, or at least that's how it appears on the surface, and that's probably how Nintendo sees it and why they don't really see it as a problem. The issue is that these figures are just in terms of the revenue earned from sales alone with no regard to quantities, and while we have some figures for the total number of first-party Nintendo games sold, the number of third-party games remains a mystery. But considering the fact that most first-party Nintendo Switch games retail for around $60 with infrequent discounts lowering them by 50% at most, whilst third-party titles tend to sell for $30 to $40 at most, but with the vast majority being sold for $20 or less, you can see how this could kind of skew the figures somewhat and downplay the scale of the issue. Now, I've read tons of comments waving off the criticisms about these shitty titles and the state of the eShop in general, such as, at least it's not as bad as the Nintendo Wii or 3DS eShop, if you don't like the look of a game then just don't buy it, or I don't really care, I buy physical games. There are also those who overlook the issue, doing the research beforehand and know exactly what they're going on there to buy, or even worse, those who go onto the eShop, see some shitty titles and identify them as shitty titles, then think that everybody else should be able to do the same. But ultimately, none of the above see it as a problem either. And when you have a multi-billion-dollar company who don't see it as an issue and a portion of the player base who don't see it as an issue, then it's clearly not an issue, right? Well, the fact is, regardless of how many people don't see it as an issue, there are a portion of us that do, and Nintendo are clearly failing us as customers, and in the case of scam games, potentially breaching the Consumer Rights Act by acting as vendors for the games whose screenshots and descriptions don't accurately represent the products that we're buying. And while you could argue that purchasing a game for $2 is no real loss, for some people it is. And ultimately, you still fill in the pockets of these scam artists and shovelware producers and continuing to enable them to operate. Consumers aside though, the fact of the matter is this doesn't just affect the gamers, as indie game publishers with a genuine passion for creating games get lost amongst the detritus, and every spot on the eShop taken up by a Red Deer Games special or another shitty mobile port is one less chance for them to be noticed. And as a lifelong gamer, this is something that I personally feel very concerned about. You see, every AAA game developer started off as one of these lowly indie game developers. Without Pitfall, Activision Games likely wouldn't have gone on to found Treyarch and produce the Call of Duty franchise. Take-Two Interactive wouldn't have brought us Rockstar with blockbusters such as Grand Theft Auto or 2K Games with BioShock, and games like The Last of Us wouldn't exist without the success of Naughty Dog and Crash Bandicoot. What I'm trying to say here is that without indie game developers succeeding through being discovered and selling games, then the opportunity for them to grow and flourish into AAA game studios and publish the next generation of AAA games is made all the more difficult, and in some cases, impossible. I mean, imagine spending months or even years developing an awesome indie game only for it to flop and be outsold by the latest hentai game. And the worst part is, a lot of these publishers' games don't even get accepted onto the eShop in the first place. So yeah, this issue is not just about you as a consumer. Regardless of whether or not you buy these kind of games, it has a knock-on effect on the gaming industry as a whole. And while you could argue that the Nintendo Switch is only one of 3 major console platforms that these publishers could produce games for, it's still the best selling console today, and undoubtedly the easiest of the 3 to get established on. With all that being said though, what is the root cause of the issue and what can we do to solve it? Well, as I just mentioned, to start with, the Nintendo Switch is relatively easier to get your games published on, and this is all thanks to Nintendo relaxing its policy on third-party publishing, a lesson learnt from the Wii and Wii U days. Its initial unveiling released a slew of third-party publishers, and the 2019 financial report revealed that the number of development kits shipped to publishers greatly exceeds those of any of the previous platforms. There does, however, appear to be a bit of a caveat here though, as many smaller indie devs are still reporting that they were rejected by Nintendo, despite other larger publishers being allowed to continue to develop and release the scam games on the platform. A Kotaku interview from 2018 with Damon Baker, then the senior manager of publisher and developer relations at Nintendo, may actually shed some light on this inequality though, as according to him, Nintendo have evolved past what was initially more of a curated content position to now being a curated partnership position. And he went on to say that they are now putting trust in partnerships with publishers and, based on the level of confidence with them, are more likely to accept developers through them and grandfather them into the process. What all this means though is that essentially, once you get your foot through the door and get accepted as a trusted publisher or self-publisher, Nintendo is then willing to accept your word that a game is of sufficient quality, and in essence allow you to publish it without question. And I suspect this is exactly what we're seeing right now. While this new stance from Nintendo has undeniably opened the door for new indie developers, giving them a fighting chance and an opportunity to showcase their skills, it's inevitably opened the floodgates for publishers such as Midnight Works, and with Nintendo appearing to be no longer monitoring the quality of games directly, the resulting situation is clearly open to exploitation. From my perspective though, the Nintendo Switch eShop is in a dire state right now to say the least. You have countless mobile ports, Red Deer Games and other publishers repeatedly releasing the same games bundled together with different DLC combinations, asset flips of pre-made game templates purchased from the Unity Asset Store, and the likes of Midnight Works publishing games under no less than 8 different publishing names, each of which attempt to con people out of the hard-earned cash with false game descriptions and screenshots. All the while, Nintendo stands by and lets it happen. So how do we fix this problem, and as I asked before, is it even a problem? Well, this is purely speculation now, but I believe that Nintendo don't actually want to fix things, and as I've alluded to throughout this video, this all boils down to one thing: money. Now, setting aside the cost in man-hours that it would take to give the eShop a complete makeover, from what I can tell, Nintendo has so far published about 150 first-party titles on the Switch, with them alone accounting for around 8% of the total revenue from game sales in 2023, so that leaves about 12,000 third-party titles making up the other 20%. Now that might not seem like a large percentage, but we're talking about billions of dollars here, 6.6 billion to be precise since the Switch's release, and if you think about it, the eShop would feel pretty barren without all those additional games. While they're not necessarily propping up the platform in terms of sales figures, with 20 or 30 new games releasing every week, it does ensure that there's always something for people to come back to the eShop for. And whilst there, perhaps even take a punt on that $5 deal, which if it turns out to be absolute shite, is no real biggie, because Nintendo know that people won't complain or ask for refunds, as they make it almost impossible to do so. In fact, it took me nearly 2 weeks of backing and forthing with a Nintendo customer service advisor to get a refund for just one Midnight Works scam game. a process which involved me sending them multiple screenshots comparing the eShop images to in-game images, highlighting to them every discrepancy between the game's description and the actual gameplay, and eventually throwing the book at them with regards to the Consumer Rights Act. And after all that, despite them saying that they would pass on the report to the dedicated department for investigation, the game still remains on sale on the eShop to this day. But while we can all agree that a scam is a scam no matter which way you butter it, or at least most of us can, what exactly constitutes as a game is purely subjective and open to debate, and we each have our own thoughts and opinions on this. So with this in mind, instead of pushing Nintendo to solve the problem, instead I propose that they give us, the consumers, the tools with which to do so. Now, earlier in the video I mentioned the addition of a My Nintendo menu for the eShop, and this menu would add a host of features to enable us to perform our own curation on the store. These features could include not only our wish list, which is currently hidden away in the profile menu, and adding to it an additional option to notify us when a game goes on sale, but also give us the ability to favourite and blacklist specific publishers, highlighting our favourites to make the games easier to spot whilst browsing, and hiding games from publishers we don't want to see, essentially cleaning up the listings and giving us a trash-free browsing experience. It could also include the re-download menu with a new A to Z filtering system to easily find and reinstall games, and finally, a ratings menu where we can leave ratings for games that we've purchased. This rating system doesn't need to be anything complex, just a simple rating from 1 to 5 would suffice, which could then be used as a filter or sorting option whilst searching for games to buy. Because let's be honest, the only real way to identify a decent game right now is to either go onto the Deku Deals website and trust Metacritic ratings, or alternatively read or watch a review from a limited collection of critics such as myself, whose own subjective opinions may not align to your own. Of course, as we've seen on other platforms, rating systems are fundamentally flawed and are open to exploitation, as review bombing of games and fake paid for reviews on digital storefronts such as Amazon are commonplace nowadays, but making it so that only verified purchasers could submit ratings and adding in a Global's rating overview showing how many people rated it a certain way would go some way to combating this. And while it isn't a perfect solution by any means, it would definitely be better than the nothing that we've currently got. Also Nintendo, please do us all a favour and add some goddamn ambient music in there or something, because the only thing more painful than navigating through your shit show of an eShop is navigating through it in silence. That though, my friends, is just my 2 cents on everything wrong with the Nintendo Switch eShop, why I think that the issues it has are relevant not only to the consumer but the wider gaming community and the gaming industry as a whole, what could be done to fix them, and why I don't believe Nintendo want to, but how they could at least offer us the opportunity to do so. It's been a long video this one, in fact the longest video that I've made to date, but hopefully I've managed to convince you that it's time for a change, and if not, well at least we still have the Switch 2's eShop to look forward to. With that being said though, if you the viewers have any suggestions on how the eShop could be improved, I welcome you all to share them down in the comments section below. But for now, if you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more Nintendo Switch related content. Thanks to the patrons of the channel for their ongoing support, and to you the viewers for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.